the 27th of June 1967 at 12:30 midday. We were having a country walk on the top of Newlands Downs between One Tree Lane and Newlands Corner, and we observed about 1.5 miles away, the other side of Albury Church, a snow-white object which looked like a balloon or a parachute, moving very rapidly up and down a meadow from north to south. We thought at first it was a snow-white horse galloping, and then we realized that it wasn't. It was moving very fast, because even at that distance you could see it was fast. This went on for about 10 minutes. The object suddenly stopped at the top of the meadow, close to a hedge and trees, and started moving very slowly from west to east in the direction of Albury Park and Sheer. We realized that it was not a balloon, and we realized that it was not a parachute, so we kept observation on it. It moved slowly along the hedge towards a number of cows. It seemed to be either measuring or investigating. Didn't seem to quite know what it was doing. And however, we continued to watch it. It moved very slowly across the next field towards a very high avenue of trees and a very wide hedge indeed. Still thinking it was probably a balloon or a parachute, we assumed that of course it would be caught in the trees and it would finish its progress. But to our amazement, when it arrived at the hedge and the trees, it seemed to pause for about half a minute, as though it was not quite sure, and quite steadily and firmly it rose right up over the trees without any effort whatsoever. It ran along the top of the trees, quite 50 yards, down the other side into the next meadow, where it continued its very quiet progress, still as though it was sort of observing or trying to find out some information. We're quite sure it wasn't a balloon, because if it had been a balloon, it had been deflated sufficiently that it had reached the ground and actually couldn't get airborne again. If it had been a parachute, obviously its strings would have got caught in the hedge and in the trees. With regard to being taken by the wind, there was a very slight breeze at the time, very slight indeed, south-southwest. But the fact that it was taken by the breeze is not explained by reason that for 10 minutes it was going very fast from north to south and south to north up the meadow before it started to progress towards Sheer. By then it was about 1:45 in the afternoon. We'd been observing it nearly an hour, and the last we saw of it, it was just approaching an avenue of trees which I should say couldn't have been more than about 300 yards from Albury Park, or from the road that goes from the big ecclesiastical church down there, past the gates of Albury Park up over to Brook. One thing I did notice, but I can't be dead sure about this, other observers might have seen it, there appeared to be some slight deflation on the top left-hand side of it, with an up and down movement, a billowy sort of movement, as though it was some sort of material, the sort of movement, the sort of billowy motion that you see on a parachute when it finally subsides. But this was quite steady and extremely regular, sort of breathing effect, just steadily up and down. That's the only thing I can say. It was snow-white. As far as size was concerned, I was able to estimate the size because it went sufficiently close to the cow. The size was about twice the size of a cow, or 2.5 times the size of a cow. It was snow-white, shimmering, rather like an egg, a white egg that has got the skin taken off. It's got the shell taken off. If you can imagine an egg with no shell. It didn't seem to turn round. It seemed to stay quite in the same position for its movements. There again, it was 1.5 miles away, And in addition to the billowy movement, I thought I had noticed on the further end of it a sort of dark brownish, blackish sort of thing. I can only call it a thing. It wasn't entirely devoid, it wasn't entirely egg. There was a black thing on the end of it. I couldn't tell you what it was, but there was definitely a black thing on the end of it. And that's all I can tell you. My wife wanted to get home, and it was getting late now, it was about 1:45. But my intention was, I observed it very carefully in relation to Albury Church, which I could see across the valley. I wanted to take my car down to Albury Church, where I had parked the car, and anybody who likes to go now to the back of Albury Church, right behind Albury Church, due south of Albury Church, they'll find a meadow up there. At the top of that meadow, they will see a hedge and a line of trees. Well, that is exactly where this object went, right along that hedge. And the up and down movement was slightly to the right of Albury Church from where I was looking. And at the speed it was going, in the latter part of our observation, there would be no problem at all in catching it up. It wasn't going fast at all. I could have run across that field myself and gone right up to it. Yes. If I'd ever been allowed to get near it, I don't know. But I didn't do so. No. And that's all I can tell you. Got a map here. I don't think there's anything else I can help you on, except that I analysed its movements all the time. I tried to find an explanation, and every time I found an explanation, it did something which completely disproved that. If it had been a balloon that had been deflated and was on the ground because it could no longer get airborne, that was completely disproved by the fact that it had no effort at all in climbing right up high over those trees, which were quite high, quite high. If it had been a parachute or a balloon as we know it, it's almost, and couldn't rise above the field because it was on the ground, obviously it would have been blown against the hedge and the field and the trees, and there would have stuck. Yeah. If it had been a parachute, of course, all those strings would have been caught in the trees and everything. So all that is disproved. This object, definitely unidentified object, made no effort at all in getting over the trees. It did it quite slowly, steadily, quietly. No effort at all, but the effect, to me, the effect seemed as though it was investigating and observing and taking in, or measuring, it could have been. Everything was motivated, it was deliberate. All its movements were deliberate. There was nothing haphazard. There was nothing haphazard about it at all. It's the first time I've ever seen an object of this description. It's the first time I've ever seen an object that I've not been able to identify, except one very, very low meteorite. Once I saw one night which was so low I don't know whether it was a meteorite, that was up here. But this was in broad daylight in the meadow. I mean, there was no question.
I work around the field where the Newlands Corner near Guildford in June 1967. Squadron Leader Shipwright was walking on the downs with his wife when they both saw a white object moving in a field below them, about a mile away.
And he saw what he first thought was a white horse galloping in a field. He was actually looking down on it into a field about a mile away, because it's right on top of the hill here. You can see for many miles. and he saw this thing, and then he looked at it, and he saw that it wasn't a horse. It was either spherical or very slightly egg-shaped, and it was moving up and down very rapidly in this field. Watched it for a bit, then it stopped and started moving slowly at a right angle to its previous path. It came to a hedge. He thought, well, this was a balloon which had got loose. Then it would be tangled up in this hedge. But in fact, got to this hedge and rose up and, over this belt of trees, and he eventually lost interest in it and went up to have their lunch, but he didn't actually see it disappear.
Oh, that's it, Lucy. What an ending! What an ending! It must have been an exciting ending.
But anyway, he contacted me about it, and a few days later, my father and him and me went to this field, and we found the place where this thing had been moving backwards and forwards very quickly, north, south, south, north direction. And we found a scatter of pieces of what appeared to be sandstone. Most of them very small, but one of them was much larger and seemed to have some kind of pattern engraved in the top. Now this I took home. He took home with us, and we've actually got here. If you like to come and
Oh yes, yes.
Let's just hold this up, shall we?
You never hold them up. I've got yours.
Oh, this would be a really good gracious.
you never found what would have made that. Normally, if it had been a farm machinery scratched it, it wouldn't have made these sort of very smooth curve. And we left. There was another piece of the stone, a smaller piece, which was the same as this when we got it. Was left out in the weather, and it discoloured very quickly. So we don't think this could have been there very long. And we don't know what. But this was
going this way. It's an arrow.
This was actually on the place where this was seen, moving very quickly.
That's what my guide can do to see if there's any activity there. Oh.
So that was it. And we'll go. We'll go over there just to see the view from where he saw the UFO, isn't it?
There's nothing on the other side, is there?
No, there doesn't seem to be. It wasn't embedded in the ground at all.
Oh, it's September, don't know, look, that. You know, that sort of ridge there doesn't look quite natural, does it? That's what they call an erratic. Right. It looks as though something, sharp has been, or, steel has been scraped along, doesn't it? But it's certainly...
Somebody suggested it looked more like sandblasting than a scratch. Because a scratch would just make a score mark, but these things are rounded.
But it looks as though it's got a streak line on it. I don't think sandblasting wouldn't leave a streak line, would it? This I see sort of streakiness as though something's been dragged along there. That's fascinating.
Are you suggesting that these bits of stone and sandstone was dropped?
Well, I don't know really, because there was no other, there wasn't any other occurrences of it anywhere else in the field.
So it's likely.
Bit of heavy evidence like that, isn't it?
I'm going to be strong for this, I can tell.
This is the stone, and the smaller one which discoloured when left out in the weather. 2 years before this incident, I'd obtained a set of the pictures of Mars sent back from the space probe Mariner 4. This was the best of them, showing a seemingly desolate landscape, but with some shadowless bright spots. Being a lay hunter, I decided to link the spots up with landscape features and found to my surprise that an isosceles triangle with a perpendicular appeared, a pattern quite frequently found in lays on Earth. When the Albury stone was found, I was even more surprised at the similarity with this picture, especially as the stone is a rather Mars-like colour.